Hi everybody, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and today I read Jean Racine's Phaedra, French classical tragedy, 1660s, maybe 1670s. It's a very strong play, and this was the Richard Wilbur translation. And if you're a native English speaker, or you speak English or read English, but you can't speak or read French, and I put myself in that category, I highly recommend the Richard Wilbur translations of French poetic works. I find them very strong. I find they read with a strong English poetic sensibility. So there, just very briefly, there are a number of versions of this myth. Racine's is sort of like mythically true. We can't really say historically true, but it's consistent with the other myths. There's sort of one little twist he puts in, I should say two. And I'll talk about some of those others at the end of the video. But to jump into this, so Phaedra is the wife of Theseus. Theseus, you probably remember myth of the Minotaur. He slays the Minotaur. Ariadne gives him the thread to find his way through the labyrinth. The Minotaur, of course, is this monstrous half-bull, half-human creature who is in the labyrinth and is supposedly the offspring of a bull and the queen there, Pasiphae. Well, she has other children, and one of her daughters is Ariadne. Theseus, despite her saving Theseus' life, Theseus later abandons her and marries her sister Phaedra later on. This Theseus is just a whole other video of not a great guy, terrible husband, terrible father. So he has been gone for a while. He's missing. Where is he? Well, it's not important. What is important is Phaedra. And what I like about Racine's version of this tragedy is that it centers the tragedy on Phaedra, not on Theseus and Hippolytus. Bad things happen to Hippolytus, but it's very much the conflict is within Phaedra herself. She's not just this agent from the gods to wreak havoc on all of the lives of these men. And I think Racine does a nice job of bringing that out. So Phaedra, and I guess the question is, if you've ever had a secret that you felt nobody could know, and if they knew it was going to really negatively affect your life, it was going to negatively affect the lives of others, it's hard to come up with modern analogs. For Racine, I think it would have been like religious conflict that would have been sort of the center for him. So in the 17th century, we've passed the 30 Years' War, we've passed the great conflicts that were springing up with the Protestant Reformation in Europe. But there are still religious conflicts, there are still wars. And I think that might have been sort of what was fueling some of his drive as a writer in creating this. For Phaedra, of course, it's a much different secret she's keeping. She's in love with her stepson, Hippolytus. So she has no blood relation to Hippolytus, but she's married to his father. And Theseus in the myths killed Hippolytus' mother, Hippolyta, at his wedding with Phaedra. So this is just kind of a terrible start to the relationship. But Phaedra has fallen in love with Hippolytus. And she's kept it as a secret, and it's just destroying her. She's not eating, she's becoming sick. She openly says she doesn't want to stay alive because she's consumed by this, and knows that if that secret comes out, her reputation, her family, her sense of honor and virtue, all of that is gone if it comes out that she's in love with her stepson. And so because of that, she just would rather not be alive than face all of that ignominy. And her, she's talking with this confidant who, is sort of just taken aback. It had been lambasting Hippolytus as he's the spawn of a Scythian. You can't let this barbarian rule. You and your children need to secure the throne. So then news comes, which is that Theseus has been missing, and he's dead. We think he's dead. He went down to hell once, and he managed to somehow find his way, get out of the underworld and con his way out. He's gone now. Oh. So there comes this now interaction between Phaedra and Hippolytus. And so they're discussing the fact that his father, her husband, is dead. She goes, "No one goes twice among the dead, and since Theseus has seen these gloomy regions, prince, no god will bring him back, hope though you may, nor greedy Acheron yield up his prey. But no, he is not dead, he breathes in you. My husband still seems present to my view. I see him, speak with him. Ah, my lord, I feel crazed with a passion which I can't conceal." So Hippolytus is very confused. In your strong love what wondrous power lies! Theseus, though dead, appears before your eyes. For love of him your soul is still on fire. And Phaedra, yes, prince, I burn for him with starved desire, though not as he was seen among the shades, the fickle worshipper of 1,000 maids, intent on cuckolding the king of hell, but constant, proud, a little shy as well. Young, charming, irresistible, much as we depict our gods, or as you look to me. He had your eyes, your voice, your virile grace. It was your noble blush that tinged his face. And she goes on, and he suddenly dawns on Hippolytus. Oh. And so, gods, what are you saying, madam? Is Theseus not your husband and my sire? Have you forgot? Phaedra, you think that I forget those things? For shame, my lord. Have I no care for my good name? And so Hippolytus is baffled by this and essentially says, absolutely not. And so she takes his sword, saying, like, you know, if you're going to reject me, like, I've been wanting to die because I was in love with you. Now I just shouldn't, you know, I can't live any longer. Well, Hippolytus, it turns out, has fallen in love with another, like, noblewoman who has a rival claim to one of the thrones that Theseus claims. And he says, oh, I'm going to support your claim and I'm going to do these things. And Phaedra, of course, is now convinced. And then the news comes: Theseus isn't dead. Theseus never dies in these myths. This guy, like, he's the cat with 9 lives. You just can't get rid of him. He's a bit like Odysseus in that matter. So Theseus is back, and now Phaedra's terrified because she had been keeping this secret that would destroy her life, and now she's told Hippolytus. As soon as Theseus finds out, everything's over. So her friend, her confidant, tells her, well, listen, I'll take care of this. And goes in and says, you know, Theseus, Hippolytus tried to assault your wife, Phaedra. And, you know, then, like, was going to use this dagger to kill her. And she ran off. And Theseus has been able to tell when he arrives and he sees everybody there, something's weird, something wrong is going on. And so he hears this and he's just consumed and calls down a curse upon, you know, Hippolytus. And this is one of the 2 changes Racine makes. So in Euripides, of course, there are the gods of the Greek pantheon who act as characters and who come down and like interact and do things. Well, in Phaedra, there's never a character who is a god. We're told that these things happen and natural events happen, but there's never a god that comes down and says, I did this, and here's why I did this. Here's why I did this to, like, ruin this human's life. And so that's one of the 2 changes. And of course, this is a play in the 1660s or 1670s. It's very much on the cusp of the coming Enlightenment, Age of Reason. And so that kind of makes sense, but it also presents this other view that's kind of scary of just, you know, there is no supernatural agent coming down and forcing these horrible things on these people. The tragedy is that humans themselves, you know, are the agents of the destruction. And that's a little bit of a twist. And so we have an incredible passage, and I think the strength of Phaedra is in the poetry Racine gives the character of Phaedra. And so she has this passage where she talks about why she's so terrified, A, to be alive because of all the dishonor that's coming, and now the secret's out, but B, she's terrified of death because of what she believes will happen. Her own father, Minos, as a you know, very powerful human, was made one of the judges of the underworld. And so that's what confronts her when she thinks of what happens. At every word my hair stands up on end. The measure of my crimes is now replete. I foul the air with incest and deceit. My murderous hands are itching to be stained with innocent blood, that vengeance be obtained. Wretch that I am, how can I live? How face the sacred son, great elder of my race? My grandsire was of all the gods most high. My forebears fill the world and all the sky. Where can I hide? For Hades' night I yearn. No! There my father holds the dreadful urn, entrusted to his hands by fate, it's said. There Minos judges all the ashen dead. Ah, how his shade will tremble with surprise to see his daughter brought before his eyes, forced to confess a throng of sins, to tell of crimes perhaps unheard of yet in hell. What will you say then, father? As in a dream I see you drop the fearful urn. You seem to ponder some new torment fit for her, yourself become your own child's torturer. Forgive me, a cruel god destroys your line. Behold her hand in these mad deeds of mine. My heart, alas, not once enjoyed the fruit of its dark shameful crime. In fierce pursuit misfortune dogs me till, with my last breath, my sad life shall in torments yield to death. And it's just astonishing poetry. It's almost like the best of Robert Browning's dramatic monologues thrust into a tragedy. That's the strength of the poetry. And the images she conjures up, and the idea of this, the son is important because it's not only a grandparent of Phaedra's, but this entire tragedy is taking course across one day. So the sun is there the entire time, sort of shining down on Phaedra as her secret is revealed and laid bare before the sun, as the lie about Hippolytus is pushed out in before the sun, as now she has a chance to, recant it, and then when she finds out Hippolytus rejected her and is in love with someone else, just refuses to recant now and says, no, I want, he deserves to suffer. And so all of these, awful things are happening before that sun, and so she wants to get away from the sun, but if she dies, she goes to face her father with all of these events having occurred in just the past 24 hours. And it's a really astonishing work. And so that leaves us to what happens to Hippolytus, which is scary as heck. So, out of the sea deeps then a frightful cry arose to tear the quiet of the sky, and a dread voice from far beneath the ground replies and groans to that appalling sound. Our hearts congeal, blood freezes in our veins. The horses, hearing, bristle up their manes, and now there rises from the sea's calm breast a liquid mountain with a seething crest. The wave approaches, breaks, and spews before our eyes a ravaging monster on the shore. His huge brows armed with horns, the spray unveils a body covered all with yellow scales. Half bull he is, half dragon, fiery, bold. His thrashing tail contorts in fold on fold. With echoing bellows now he shakes the strand. The sky, aghast, beholds him. He makes the land shudder. His foul breath chokes the atmosphere. The wave in which brought him in recoils in fear. Everyone flees except Hippolytus, who throws a javelin. I mean, this is incredible poetry. And then as the monster dies, it terrifies the horses, who take off. And Hippolytus, this master horseman, is dragged in his reins, and his body's just torn apart. And we don't see that. We're just, it's described to all of us in that astonishing poetry. And so we close with Theseus, of course, has realized something's wrong because now Phaedra's nurse has thrown herself into the sea. Did Hippolytus actually do this? And Phaedra walks out and has this one final monologue before Theseus and what's left of the court. Already to my heart the venom gives an alien coldness, so that it scarcely lives. Already to my sight all clouds and fades. The sky my spouse, the world my life degrades. Death dims my eyes, which soiled what they could see, restoring to the light its purity. And then she dies from the poison she's taken. And that's the other big change. She is given these final words of just beautiful poetry. But Racine puts her on the stage to have this final scene after Hippolytus has, received the vengeance of the gods upon him and died. And that was not something Euripides did. Euripides very much centered it on Theseus and Hippolytus, this father-son dynamic, how Theseus just couldn't stand what a strange guy Hippolytus was, and maybe he was a vegetarian, maybe he was celibate. Like, Theseus just couldn't get Hippolytus and doesn't really like him and trust him. In this, of course, it's very much Phaedra who has this secret, and then watches as that is borne out. The tragedy just tumbles out, and there are all of these different choices where she chooses to makes a choice to allow the suffering or the secret to continue to perpetuate, or tells a lie to cover the secret, or refuses to recant the lie. But there's also this sense of the horror for her of what is happening. that the entire time she's feeling terrible about it. And it's really an astonishing like role. And it's that role that enamored Proust so much in The Shadows of Young Girls in Flower. This is what I'm reading right now. And he dwells for about 25 pages on the narrator himself going to see a performance of Phaedra by the most famous French actress of the time, Wilbur. And that was why I had read Phaedra the first time when I read In Shadow of Young Girls in Flower. This time I read the Wilbur translation, which I loved. So Euripides wrote a version. It's called Hippolytus. It's probably his second strongest tragedy, in my opinion. I prefer Alcestis. Ovid in the Heroines, letter 4 is from Phaedra to Hippolytus, and he puts it in this phrase of she's worried that she's, he finds her unattractive because she's older than he is, which is that's Ovid for you. And then as an interesting one, Robert Graves in his mammoth Greek myths, like encyclopedia, that is just a real joy and treasure, makes a point that he believes that the myth of Phaedra and Hippolytus can be traced to the same story that we find in Genesis about Joseph and Potiphar's wife. And I had read Joseph in Egypt in late March and really enjoyed it, and found that sort of a couple of scenes in that to be sort of a horror story worthy of some of the poetry of Racine. So I highly recommend this translation. It's a very strong play. If you've never read classical French drama, Racine, Phaedra, and Andromache are both very strong plays. For tragedy, Molière, of course, is just a hilarious comedian. And so I think that's where I'll leave it. Thanks, everyone.